Well, good morning. Happy Monday morning, May 10th. Good morning, everyone. Daryl and Suzanne, welcome to you this morning. Hope you're doing well on this Monday morning. Jan Akins, good to see you this morning. I hope you enjoyed your weekend with Jeremy and Wendy, and I imagine at least a couple of the boys were there with you guys as well. Dana Kreshock, good morning. Jim and Kathy, good to see you this morning. Barbara Whitney, welcome. I look a little chilly. It is a little bit cooler this morning, but it's not as cold as it has been. It's warming up, isn't it? Marcy Walters, Tim and Marcy, good to see you. Steve and Andrea, good morning. Carmen Lego, good morning, Mom. Good to see you this morning. Letitia Sexton, good morning. Debbie King, good morning. Jeremy and Wendy, good morning. So today, I'm launching something new this week. Last Thursday, I talked about processing emotions, and as I talked through that and I thought about it more over the weekend, I thought it'd be really helpful. Well, I perceive it to be helpful to talk about that subject more, and there's so many things to talk about with regard to that I think is generally helpful. At least in my journey of understanding and how to process my emotions, that has resulted in such good sense of who I am and how to experience life, my relationship with God. It's deepened my relationship with people, all these positive things that I thought, I'm going to spend this week talking a little bit more about it. So I'm not going to be in Psalms this week. I mean, I'll probably on my own be in Psalms and do my own thing, but this week I'm just going to dedicate time on this live stream to talking about processing emotions. By the way, Martha and I picked up Matthew and Sheila and the kids. They're home from Hawaii. We were at the airport last night. We got back quite late, almost 1 by the time I went to bed. And but when you're an early riser, your body just wakes up at 5:30, no matter what. So here I am. I'm going to be paying for it later in the day. So Thursday, I talked about how I used to process emotions, and I looked at them as being fitting into two general categories, bad and good. And I wanted to feel only good emotions, so I concentrated and spent a lot of energy on that, and spent a lot of energy on seeing how I could just get rid of and not feel any negative emotions. Well, as you can imagine, that wasn't very profitable, wasn't very successful. And so I had to change my approach to how I processed emotions. And one of the things that was helpful to me is relabeling what I called negative emotions. Thursday, I talked about a part of the process of relabeling emotions is actually labeling emotions in the first place. If I only had 2 labels, good, bad, I had a very small vocabulary to describe what I was actually feeling, what I was actually experiencing. So it was really helpful for me to grow my vocabulary to identify my feelings as a part of the journey. So, I went to Google, like everybody does, and I Googled what are the basic emotions? Are there like 10, 20? And there's a lot of different charts and everything out there I've alluded to last time, but the one I landed on that was easiest because it boiled it down to 6 basic emotions, with all the other emotions that we feel are subsets of those basic emotions or combinations of those basic emotions. So it's easy for me to remember 6 things, except for when I'm trying to tell them to someone off the top of my head, then I don't remember them. But anyway, I've said them last week, and I'll try to remember them again for us today. That is happiness, sadness, anger, fear, disgust, and there's one more, the 6th one. I wrote them down in my journal this morning just to remind me, so I'll get it. Surprise, that was the other one. So I'm just going to talk about today what I perceive to be negative emotions. I'm going to change that word a bit, but we're just going to focus on those things. So if you remember from last week, I said of those 6 emotions, 5 of them are labeled as negative in my mind. So that's a lot of energy that I was expending trying to avoid those emotions, so that I can experience more happiness. And when I was expending all that energy, I was realizing that I wasn't experiencing happiness the way I thought I ought to, because I was burning a lot of juice trying to avoid all the negatives. So how is there a way of reframing these things? And as I researched this and explored this, I found that I could. That it was I was thinking, I had distorted thinking about my emotions. That these, what I perceived to be negative emotions, actually weren't. They're not negative emotions. They're actually helpful. They're appropriate. They're healthy emotions that feel. They're part of who we are. So I'm going to put a little bookmark right now, because we're going to explore 3 of the 5 negative emotions in our list. Because I'm going to throw out surprise and disgust, because those are like, we understand those in a very amoral sense. It's like, I don't think they're good or bad. They're just something that happens to me when someone like jumps out from behind something. I'm surprised, I didn't expect that. It's just a response. And the same with disgust. I mean, I look at something that is repulsive to me, and that's just something that's in me. I don't look at that with any kind of judgment. Whereas sadness, fear, and anger, I do look at with judgment. And where does my judgment come from? And let me just suggest this. This is why I would think about adding this to a morning devotion, right? This is supposed to be a Christian thing. Why am I talking about anger, sadness, and fear? It's because the Bible talks a lot about anger, sadness, and fear. And where my judgment was coming from is verses like, do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. Fear. Another word, subset of fear, is worry. Jesus said, do not worry about tomorrow. Another subset of fear is anxiety. The Bible says, be anxious for nothing. So all of a sudden, if I'm actually feeling fear, worry, and anxiety, then all of a sudden I'm contradicting what the Bible's telling me not to do. And now I'm doing something wrong. And now I'm feeling guilty that I'm feeling fear, anxiety, and I'm not supposed to feel that thing. And all of a sudden now I'm saying I am sinning against God because I feel fear, worry, and anxiety. So you get what I'm saying? So these, having a distorted thinking about these emotions that aren't inherently bad, they just feel bad at times, we can all of a sudden put a Christian spin on it and say, wow, why am I fearing tomorrow? Why am I worrying? Why do I have anxiety? And all of a sudden I think, I am sinning. I'm sinning against God. And let me just say, at a very basic level, that is untrue. That is not what Jesus is saying. That is not what God is saying when he writes these things. It is not that when we experience these feelings that we're sinning against him. He's acknowledging that we do feel these things. So anyway, let's put that on the table. Why would we as Christians talk about fear, anger, and the other words, anger? Do not. When you are angry with your brother, this is Jesus. When Jesus said, when you're angry with your brother, it's like you're committing murder. So anger is sin. That's untrue, but that's how we can spin this stuff, and we can put a moral value on our emotions, and we're like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this. I shouldn't feel fear. I shouldn't feel anger. Sadness. We read about sadness in the Bible, and we read, consider it all joy, my brethren, when you're experiencing trials and difficulties that are really making you sad, but you shouldn't feel sad, because if you're really a believer, you should feel joy. So we attach these moral values to sadness, anger, and fear. and we assign Christian values to them. And all of a sudden, man, if I'm experiencing these things, I'm sinning. I'm in sin, you know. And I'm just here to tell you that that's distorted thinking. That's not right. And so it's important for me to kind of walk through that together for a few days to kind of dispel some of these things, but just kind of anecdotally telling you about my journey and how I discovered these things that are actually helpful, appropriate to feel fear, to feel anger, to feel sadness. It can actually be helpful, healthy, and appropriate. The most appropriate, and it's good. It's helpful to feel these things. Let me give you some examples. Let's take fear. Fear is let's talk about these emotions in their basic definition. Fear means that there is a danger present. So a very healthy response to that danger is the fear response in us. So if I'm out on a hike and I see a mountain lion, I have a very healthy and helpful fear response that raises up in me. If I see a rattlesnake on the trail, I have a very helpful and healthy fear response. And when my body feels fear, my brain, my limbic system in my head, tells my body to do certain things. There's a response, and we call it fight or flight, or fight, flight, and freeze. Those are our three basic responses. They're involuntary responses. All of a sudden, we just have these responses when we perceive danger. And these are good. So the body begins to retract blood from our extremities. Our digestive system turns off. And adrenaline kind of pumps into our system, and our whole body goes on high alert, so we can fight against this perceived danger. We can flee, we can run away from it. So our body is preparing ourselves, or these things all of a sudden freeze us. You know, that's not as helpful, but that's a response. And so when we have this fear response, it's what our body just naturally does when we respond to danger. It's actually good. It's helpful to experience fear. It's a helpful, good response. And so that's just an example. Anger. Anger as a pure emotion, God experiences anger, is when we experience injustice or we have this desire to protect. Often anger is our response. So maybe our child comes home and explains a situation at school where they were mistreated. Maybe a teacher singled them out for some reason, and they felt ashamed and they felt really bad about what was happening. They didn't really feel like they did anything wrong, and when a person in authority does that to our kid, right? We get mad, what? Because there is a very natural and appropriate sense of protection, and that we're for someone that we love and we have responsibility for. We perceive an injustice has taken place, and that's a natural response. Anger, in that sense, is a natural response. Now, obviously, anger can result in a bunch of negative things. We'll get to that, right? I'm just talking about how these feelings that we perceive as bad can actually be good, healthy, appropriate, helpful. What's the other one? Sadness. Sadness. Did I talk about sadness already? No. I'm sorry. There's a lot to talk about. I knew I had limited time here. Sadness. So sadness is a pure emotion when we experience loss, disappointment. We experience sadness. It is actually a very healthy, normal, helpful response to a loss. I shouldn't feel sad. Well, did you lose something? Is something you're experiencing loss in some way? You had an expectation about something taking place, and all of a sudden that expectation got pulled out, You're not going to be able to achieve that. You've just experienced loss. And sometimes, when that loss is a person, someone who we deeply care about, we feel that profoundly and deeply. That is an appropriate, very appropriate emotion to feel sad. Grief is a subset of sadness. Grief is appropriate when we lose someone we love. And so when we think of that as like, as a negative emotion, I don't want to feel grief. Well, nobody wants to feel grief. But when you look at it as helpful and appropriate, then you can feel a little more comfortable to kind of moving into that feeling. And honestly, grief, sadness, sometimes they can linger far longer than we feel comfortable with. But if we learn healthy skills how to process these emotions, we can move through them much better. We can navigate them much better. I've already alluded to the fact that we can have distorted thinking along these ways and how it affects our relationship with God. And these emotions too, when we experience them, we understand that they are often linked to relationships. People make me angry. People make me sad by the things they do and they say. I can experience fear when I have certain expectations of performance with that other people are viewing me, and I'm seeking their approval, and I fear that that they're going to disapprove of me. So fear, all these things have to do with our relationships with people. So if we're walking through our relationships, walking through our emotions, processing them in a healthy way, what can result is our relationship with God improves, our relationship with others improve. Think of the two greatest commandments of Scripture. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love others as yourself. I'm just making the case why it's important to pay attention to emotions. We don't like to talk about those. We rarely talk about them in any sermon or something. We don't have classes on this at church, yet they are so vital to our perception of God and our love for God. How do we experience love? And how do we experience a healthy relationship with other people? Oftentimes what gets in the way of these things is an unhealthy or distorted view of our basic emotions. So my goal today was to begin to relabel emotions. If we think of them as all bad, what make us feel bad, I've joked many times, emotions aren't bad, they just make us feel bad. We need to relabel them not as bad and not even as negative at times, but helpful, appropriate. And how are they helpful? Let me. I've already explained that, but I'm going to wrap it up because this is already going long. Another way they're helpful is that they can alert us to change. Is there something we need to change? It helps us to make decisions in our life. So let me give you an example. So a subset of sadness would be the emotion of hopelessness. Well, who wants to feel hopeless, right? The Bible talks a lot about having hope and, hope for the hopeless. That sounds like a sermon, right? But hopelessness is actually a productive feeling. It's a good, appropriate emotion when your goal is impossible. So let me give you a ridiculous example. I have a river I need to cross, and I begin to build a bridge with the things I have on me. I open my backpack and I pull out something out of my backpack. I'm going to build a bridge out of Ritz crackers. The Ritz with because they have the glue already attached because there's peanut butter between them. That's the kind of Ritz crackers I take anyway when I'm hiking. And I'm going to build a bridge out of Ritz crackers. And I'm working away. I'm stacking them. I'm trying to offset the stack so they start to build out this bridge that I'm going to walk across this river. Can you see if that task is not going to produce the goal of me getting across the river? And so I should have right away, even probably if I'm reasonable, I'm going to have this sense of that is a hopeless goal. Hopelessness, what it provokes in us is, do I need to change something? This current endeavor is hopeless. I need to stop what I'm doing. I need to reevaluate. I need to change my behavior, change my thinking. So even you see how even hopelessness is a very normal, healthy, and helpful feeling. But again, there's a distorted sense. Sometimes we feel hopeless when in fact the goal is quite achievable. We've just experienced a setback, or we've just gotten discouraged a little bit because we're not achieving the goal as fast as we would like to, and we kind of and we process that hopelessness and we kind of throw up our hands and give up. I can't. It will never happen. The reality is, we just need to persevere. We just need to stay the course a little bit longer. Maybe the change is developing a new set of skills to help overcome this most recent obstacle, this most recent challenge. So we have to deal with distorted thinking too. So helplessness helps us to, or our negative emotions of sadness, fear, and anger help us to discern, hey, there's something wrong. Is there something I need to change? Am I thinking appropriately about this? Is this emotion appropriate to my situation? They're all very helpful things to feel. Let us relabel them as not just bad, but actually healthy, appropriate, and helpful. And that is a very basic step in beginning to process our emotions in a way that we can love God and love people in a much deeper, fuller, and more satisfying way. And so there's lots to talk about here. I'm going to end it right there today. And we're going to keep on it this week, and we'll just see how it goes. And hopefully we'll begin to develop tools that will increase our sense of contentment, happiness, satisfaction. These are all things we want, right? And I believe they will. And our ability to love God and love people. So be blessed today on your Monday. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.